Hi, my name is Evan. I'm here to provide the second in a series of information videos on the subject of civil harassments and the county of Kern in the state of California. The first video that we produced here had to do with the subject of what civil harassment restraining orders can do for you and when they are appropriate. So we covered when civil harassments, as opposed to other kinds of harassment restraining orders, are appropriate and what they can and cannot accomplish. And in this video, we're going to focus on what information you're going to need in order to prepare your paperwork, what forms you'll need specifically and how you can fill them out, where to file them, and what, if you can't afford to pay the filing fee in your case. So always must underscore that this is meant to be for informational purposes only, and that none of this should be construed as legal advice to any viewer. This is meant just to be a supplement to the information that you would get in your own independent research on civil harassment restraining orders. And at multiple points during these videos, we're going to refer you to central locations for neutral information on this topic. These videos are just being produced to give some extra information with specific reference to Kern County at particular points. So what information we are going to need is going to be the first topic we cover. And the first step that you should take is gather some information about the person you want to ask the court to restrain. So at a minimum, you're going to need the name and the physical description of the person you want to ask the court to restrain. And the more descriptive you can get about the party you want restrained, the better. And the reason that I say this is that one of the forms that you are going to prepare has to do almost exclusively with describing the parties. So not just the person you want restrained, but you as well. So you're going to want to be descriptive here because this form gets uploaded to the California law enforcement database. And the purpose of that is that if you have someone who is harassing you and you get a court order to restrain their behavior, if you call law enforcement to enforce that order, when law enforcement arrives, you want them to be able to clearly identify the parties. So that would include not just you, but also the restrained party. So in order to give law enforcement adequate information to go off of, you want to have the name and physical description of the person you want the court to restrain. You're also going to want to think carefully about the pattern of harassment that you've experienced because you will be asked about that on the paperwork too. It's going to include questions like when did it happen, who was there when it happened, what exactly took place, and do you have any evidence of the harassment? So you want to consider these questions before you begin filling out your paperwork. So when it comes time to fill out the paperwork, you might be wondering what forms you use. Well, there's several places that you can get them. You can download your form straight from the Judicial Branch webpage, which is courts.ca.gov. And on their home screen, you can see a grid of popular topics where you can click forms and type in the required forms for your civil harassment. We list all the forms for you on the next slide. You can also pick up pre-made form packets for free from civil departments at branches of the Kern County Superior Court. And these packets are going to include not just the ones that I list on the next screen, but forms that you'll need later in the process too. So it's definitely a good idea if you prefer to use hard copies of the paperwork, you should just pick up the free packet from the Superior Court branches because they give you not just what you need to start the case, but what you need to progress through its multiple stages. We're continuing on with which forms to use. This is the list right here. The forms that you need to request your civil harassment are as follows. There is your request for civil harassment restraining order. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's where you give the details of the harassment, name you and the party you want to be restrained, and give some other information we'll cover later. Next up, you're going to have the notice of hearing. This is going to be where the clerk of the court fills in the information about when your hearing for a permanent order is set. Next up, you've got the CH-110, the temporary restraining order. This would go into effect between when you file your paperwork and the date of the permanent hearing, if it is granted by the court. And we'll cover that more in the video where we talk about the actual preparation of the forms through the use of the Law Help Interactive program. We'll get to that in a moment. Next up, you've got the CLETS 001 form. This is the one that I referenced a moment ago, where you give a physical description of you and the party you want restrained so that law enforcement has a clear picture of who's involved in the case. Finally, you've got the civil case cover sheet. This is just something that the courts use for statistical information when it comes to what cases are being filed in their court. It's just a standard part of civil cases in the state of California. And if you are filing your paperwork in the downtown Bakersfield courthouse, there is also a local form that would inform law enforcement which which department of law enforcement to dispatch, the sheriff's or BPD, just based on which jurisdiction you live in. Next up, you might be asking, like, how do I actually get this done? If you want to do it by hand, your first option, you can use the packet you get from the civil department at the court or print from the California court's website. If you download them straight from the court's website, you can also type into them if you'd prefer a neater final product. If you do choose to handwrite your forms, though, for those who are not comfortable typing, you absolutely want to use your best penmanship so that you can have as clear a picture painted as possible with your final written product. You don't want to go to the trouble of filling out all the paperwork and then have the person reading it unable to decipher what you've written. So you want to be careful to write everything as clearly as you can. And always in dark ink. Black would be best, but dark blue is okay. You just want it to be sure to show up on a scan at the Superior Court. Next up, there's also a form building program that can just ask you a series of questions and it will generate your paperwork for you. So if you're comfortable on a computer or a tablet, this form building program is pretty handy and it just gives you the same questions that are on the court paperwork, but put in more of an interview or conversational style. So it's really a lot more straightforwardly worded. So first option for the do-it-yourself paperwork, like I said, you can get your blank forms from either the court or from the judicial branch website. You can read the entire set of documents before you begin filling them out so that you can see which parts of the forms you're actually responsible for filling out. For quite a few of the forms, a good deal of the paperwork you just leave blank and the court will fill out. So you want to review the paperwork carefully before you actually start on it, so that you don't provide any less or any more information than is required. Finally, step 3, you fill out and file your paperwork with the Superior Court, and you keep in mind you don't need to make multiple copies of your paperwork in Kern County. You just bring the complete set of documents. You're going to drop them off for processing with the civil department, and once they've been processed, the civil clerks can make copies for you. An optional step before you do that, you can come to the Kern County Law Library and we can take a look at your paperwork to confirm you've not made any obvious errors and that you're not missing any of the paperwork. So obvious errors, just for examples, includes things like if you didn't sign your paperwork or you didn't date it, if you left boxes unchecked that should have been based on your responses, that you've obviously left whole sections incomplete that should have been completed under the facts of your case, improper titles on attachments, that type of thing. So no member of the staff at the law library can review the content of your petition and evaluate it for effectiveness. So we get this question in one form or another, but basically people ask us quite a lot, have I written enough to get my order? Did I write the right things to make sure that the judge is going to agree with me? Well, we cannot answer that. If you want to have your answers of legal strategy, if you want to have your questions of legal strategy answered, you need to consult with an attorney. We have no licensed attorneys on staff and therefore cannot give legal advice, but we can confirm if you have gotten any of the objective details wrong. Second option, if you want to avoid those sort of pitfalls of preparing your own paperwork by hand using hard copies, there's a free program that'll put your paperwork together for you. You just answer a series of questions and the program applies your answers to the paperwork that you need to file to request your civil harassment restraining order. And the quality of the final product in this case, as well as the handwritten forms, are still going to depend on your answers, but you won't have to worry about your formatting, checking the proper boxes, or anything like that. And you can use this program for free if you follow this link. Just scroll down until you see the link in that page titled Civil Harassment Restraining Order Petition. And I'm not going to show you in this video what the page looks like. We're going to devote a whole video to it. So if you want to check that out, be sure to watch that video on how you actually use this free program to help put your paperwork together. Basically, you'll know you're in the right place if you see this. This is the Law Help Interactive page for Civil Harassment Restraining Orders. And if you click the Create Your Account or Log In button, you can save your progress as you go. So you don't have to lose your progress if you have to pause your interview and restart it later. You can save regularly in order to avoid losing the progress you make when you answer the series of questions. So if you want to see the process of completing it, again, there's going to be a full video devoted just to that. So you can check that out on our webpage about civil harassment. I'm going to go through some frequently asked questions. This one specifically is about that form building program. The question is, does the program just file the paperwork for you? The answer is no. The program will make your paperwork for you. It prepares it, but it is still your responsibility to file your paperwork that the program creates with you with your answers. What is the filing fee for a civil harassment? Can I get my filing fee waived or excused? So the filing fee depends on whether the civil harassment alleges that the harassment has included violence, threats of violence, or stalking. So if your request alleges any of the above, then the filing fee in your case should be zero, but that's not exactly the end of the story here. Continuing this question, if your request for a civil harassment contains allegations of violence, threats of violence, or stalking, you should still either submit a check for the normal fee or request that your court fees be waived. If your petition is found to contain allegations of violence, threats of violence, or stalking, your payment will not be processed, but you should still provide something which would cover a filing fee in the event that upon review, the court decides that the petition did not contain allegations of violence, threats of violence, or stalking. Because in the event that the civil harassment petition does not contain allegations of violence, threats of violence, or stalking, then the payment would be $435 to create your civil harassment petition. So again, if your request for civil harassment does not contain those allegations, filing fee would be $435. And if you believe you can qualify to have your fees waived on the basis of that fee waiver, you should do that at the time of filing. When you go to file your paperwork, the clerks are looking either for a check or for a fee waiver request. So be sure to bring one. Next up, where am I supposed to file my paperwork? We get that one a lot. The choice is yours to make. Most of the courthouses in Kern County do accept filings for civil harassments. The courthouse in Lake Isabella has been out of operation for quite some time, but most other locations are appropriate for these filings. But if ever you're unsure, you really should just call the courthouse to make sure that they accept these filings there. If you go to the Kern County Superior Court website at the link that I've given you here below, you can check with the courthouse before you decide to file there. Next question, how soon can I get a restraining order? So this process moves in stages, and the first stage is where you have an opportunity to ask for a temporary order. So it's just what it sounds like. It's temporary, and it's only in effect while you wait for your court date, and that is only if it is issued. So you're not guaranteed a temporary order when you request one, but it is something that you may receive pending your court date on the permanent order. So how quickly can you get a temporary order? Well, the court should evaluate your civil harassment packet within one court day of filing and decide whether to issue a temporary order. So please note that what I am not saying there is that when you file your paperwork, one day later, you will have a temporary order. I am not saying that. I'm saying the court will evaluate your petition, and if they deem it appropriate, will issue the temporary order pending your hearing. So the short answer is as soon as one court day after filing, but the correct and detailed answer is that you may have a temporary order issued within one day of filing your paperwork, but it only stays in effect up until the time of your hearing, where you ask the court for a permanent order. So frequently asked question number 5, I'm worried about someone other than myself. Do they all have to file their own restraining orders? And the answer is no. The civil harassment petition allows you to ask for people to be protected other than just you. So if you're filling out the forms by hand, you give their information in the spots that ask for additional protected persons. you can ask that family members and or household members are protected by the order that you are asking for from the court. Next up, I'm being harassed by more than one person. Can I just do one set of forms and ask that they all be restrained? No. So if you are being harassed by multiple people, you would need to complete a request for each person you want restrained. And that means the whole packet of documents we went over earlier. Frequently asked question number 7. This one comes up from time to time. The form says, the Civil Harassment Restraining Order request says, I asked the court to order the person to stay blank yards away. What does that mean? So 1 yard is 3 feet. So for example, if you ask the court to order the person to stay 100 yards away, you're asking for a court order that the person stay 300 feet away from you. So remember, a yard equals 3 feet. So however many yards you ask for, triple that number, and that's how many feet away you'd have the person standing if the court issues the order. So this was just a quick introductory video on what you need to get started for a civil harassment restraining order petition. The next video in this series is going to show you how to use the Law Help Interactive program in order to generate your forms. So at the end of it, I'll review the form packet to show you what a complete set of forms looks like. It will be a totally hypothetical set of facts, and in no way should you interpret the content of my hypothetical petition to be something that you should copy or emulate. And it is not advice. It is just going to be a video to demonstrate how that form building program functions. So with that, we sign off, and we will be back for part 3 of this series of informational videos prepared for Kern County Law Library.